Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top-quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings, salutations, hello, and thank you for joining me on another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. This, of course, is a podcast that will help you live your best audacious life ever. And on today's episode, we'll talk about the importance of us speaking our individual truths. We'll be joined by speaker, author, and award-winning playwright Trey Anthony. Trey, of course, made her way into the mainstream circle with her hit play, The Kink in My Hair, which was a box office smash. It was later adapted for television and had another fantastic run. She has a new book out now, which is called Black Girl in Love with Herself, which is a book centered around self-care and self-love, where she used many experiences from her own personal life. And I think it's really important to recognize that before she could actually do that and use those experiences, she had to speak her own truth. We'll leave the rest to Trey to talk to. We'll get into all that in a moment. But let's be real here. With this, without question, speaking our truth is far easier said than done. And I'm sure if given the choice, many of us would rather take all those messy past experiences, those disappointments, whatever, stuff them in a closet, lock the door, and throw away the key. Trust me, I totally get it. I think of my own personal experience of going through a terrible divorce, and that was a few years back. It certainly wasn't something that I had wanted to, and I remember actually pushing back, but the reality is that wasn't God's plan, and I had to go through that experience. The reality is I didn't enter into a marriage with looking for it to end. So this process really wore me down. And at times I felt like I was being broken mentally and emotionally and psychologically. And, there are other times where I just kind of felt like I was under constant scrutiny as a man and a father. And in response, I was in defense mode. And that's not really a good place to be. And I knew for the sake of my kids and for myself that I had to get past that and push through that. So, when that 2-year process finally came to an end, I was happy for a bunch of reasons. But I was relatively unscathed, and I felt okay. And much of the credit I give goes to my awesome support network that was with me every step of the way, and they never let me quit, even though there were times I felt like it. And now that chapter is closed, I'm incredibly proud of the fact that I've since been able to offer that same kind of support that I received to others who I know who are going through similar experiences, and friends, whomever. Now, I say all that to say this because this is where the very important lesson came for me. Until I owned that disappointing truth of a failed marriage, I couldn't help others. I didn't hide that fact. I didn't pretend like it wasn't there. I didn't stuff it in a closet. I own that truth. And I think it's important that once we understand that when we accept that reality, there's two things that can happen. One, it helps our own personal healing. And the second, it provides an opportunity for us to be a difference maker to others. So like I said, we're going to get into all this and more with Trey. Plus, we'll talk about her book right after this quick break. Trey Anthony is a visionary creator, professional speaker, author, and award-winning playwright. Her sold-out hit play, The Kink in My Hair, grossed millions and broke box office records across Canada, US, and England. In 2007, Trey adapted The Kink for the small screen, making her the first African-Canadian woman to create, write, and produce a primetime television show on a major Canadian network. Trey speaks her truth in her new book, Black Girl in Love with Herself, as she details her inner struggles to meet the demands of her family and the societal pressures of living up to the image of being a strong Black woman. Trey details all this and more up next on the Audacious Living Podcast. Of course, on this podcast, of the Audacious Living Podcast, we talk just a lot about being bold and being audacious. And I think, Trey, for you, when you think about your career and what you've done thus far, I think that falls in line very much with that. And I think where I wanted to start, if it's okay with you, let's start with the kink in your hair and so the impetus for that, because I've heard you talk about the fact that you had to sort of come out of your box and, get away from those the roles that you're being cast to launch into something new. So sort of expand on that.
Yeah, for sure. For me, The Kink in My Hair was my first play that I'd ever written. And I wrote it out of a necessity because I was really tired of like the stereotypical roles that were being offered to me as a Black woman. And I really wanted to see just much more authentic and balanced and positive roles for Black women. So I wrote the play, not really thinking at this time that it would be what it turned out to be. We started out doing the play in like a small theater of about 20 seats. And then it went to the Fringe Festival where it broke box office records there, then went on to Theatre Passe Muraille where it broke box office records, and then got picked up by Mervish Productions. And it was in a 2,000 seat theater, broke records there, and then it turned into a TV show. So it was one of those things where I think it's when you have a plan and then the universe has a plan, and you just decide to be bold with it and just see what happens, right? So that's kind of how I really started my career. Was the kink was like the thing that really brought me into the mainstream, I would say.
Tell me, as you were breaking records and having all this success, were you kind of recognizing what was happening to you? I mean, sometimes in the moment you don't always, because you're so entrenched in what you're doing. But do you really see or realize kind of what was happening around you?
That's a great question. It's funny. I think in general, I'm the type of person who has a delayed reaction to things. And because most of the time I'm in survival mode, and I'm also a type A personality where I have a list of things that I want to do. And so that's the thing that I've been learning, I would say maybe in the last year, of really recognizing and taking a moment to just, recognize your accomplishments and to kind of bask in it. But at that time with the kink, it was such a whirlwind. And I think I was just in this kind of like, oh, okay, this is happening. Okay, what needs to happen for me to get to the next step? And you're doing press, and especially with the Kink TV show, I was writing in it, I was acting in it, I was producing it. My days started at like 4:00 in the morning, and I sometimes would be on set until 10:00 at night. And so I didn't have a chance to take it in. And it wasn't until way after the fact, I was like, oh my gosh, I did that. And, we as Black women, we did that. And so, like I said, it's something now that I'm trying to just be much more conscious of and aware of just being able to give yourself like a pat on the back, and also to kind of say, yeah, you're doing good, instead of sometimes always being in survival mode, right? And missing the moment completely.
Right. You talk about being in survival mode, and I think sometimes that comes with that is the ability to trust your instincts and trust your gut. And
Yes.
I've heard you sort of in the past talk about the significance of trusting your gut. Can you sort of touch on that? Because I think for a lot of people, we talk about how fears creep in. There's some challenges with that.
Yes, for sure. And for me, especially in the last year, I write about this in the book, Black Girl in Love, that there was a demise of my relationship happened very suddenly, a 5-year relationship. And I kept saying, when it all happened, I kept saying, oh, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. I don't know how this happened. And I realized there were definitely clues along the way, and things that my gut was like, this is a bit off, or this doesn't feel right. And because I so wanted this relationship to work, and because I so wanted to be with this person, for me, I ignored really bright red flags and kind of said, oh, well, maybe it's not a red flag. Maybe it's kind of pink. Maybe it's kind of, and I realize now, looking back, there were definitely things that my gut was trying to tell me, and I would not listen to that voice. And I'm a big believer in, I think it's Oprah who says, sometimes the universe will give you a little pebble and hit you in the head, and then the pebble becomes a stone, and then if you don't listen, then the stone becomes a brick, right? And then all of a sudden your whole head is knocked off. And that was me. Like, my whole head got knocked off. And then I was like, oh, okay, I should have listened when I felt the pebble. Yeah.
Yep. And I think for a lot of people, it's challenging, especially for the fear aspect. And I'm wondering if your just thoughts and sort of why do you think fears are so overwhelming for people that prevents them from going out and doing these great things that they're meant to do?
Yeah. I think for a lot of us, it's around the fear of failure. Sometimes it's safer to know what we know and stick with what we know. Even when I wrote The Kink in My Hair, I was with a group who we used to produce shows at Harborfront Center in Second City. And we were more like a comedy sketch group. And, we had maybe 300 people who would come out to see our shows at Harborfront. And when I said to the group, I wanted to move in a different direction and maybe we should do something a bit more serious and do dramatic work. And I'd written this play called The Kink in My Hair. This on my own. And I realized, and of course, at that time I was fearful because I was going away from, my support network. I was going against what people had known me for, of doing comedy and sketch and doing something different. But I also knew that I had outgrown where I was. And I think a lot of times we do not want to recognize that, sometimes we've outgrown people, we've outgrown an environment, we've outgrown a job, we've outgrown even our friends and family. And we need to be okay with seeking what's next, right? And so I think for me, when people ask, like, what has been this secret of your success? It's always been for me. Even when I'm fearful, I still march ahead because I think I'm more afraid of remaining stagnant than being doing something new and failing. Like, I never want to look back on my life and say I stayed in something and was stagnant and was unhappy and I didn't allow myself to grow.
And is that why, and I've heard you talk about the kink in your hair being the call to truth for you? Is that sort of?
Yeah, it was definitely a call to truth. Although my work, I feel, with my writing for myself has always been about what's true for me in that moment, right? So the kink was definitely my moment of truth, of saying, this is how I want to show up in the world and authentically. And these are the kind of stories I want to create. And then when I wrote Black Girl in Love with Myself, my new book, I had to change the whole pitch and direction of the book because when I got the book deal, the publishers were asking me to write a book on how did you manifest this great love and relationship. And all of a sudden, my whole great love and relationship was blowing up in my face, right? So there was a part of me was like, okay, well, you can go ahead and pretend everything's okay. Or you can really stand in your truth and go, wow, I really messed up. Like, I'm advising women how to manifest great love and be in a great relationship. And yet I missed the tsunami, what was hitting my own relationship. And so I had to really stand in that truth and be transparent about that. And of course, there's a level of humility in that and a level of shame. But I think one of the reasons why people are attracted to my work is because I am very transparent about what I'm going through at that given moment and trying to really find the lessons in that.
And I think that's where people would appreciate that, the fact it resonates with them because they themselves may be going through a similar experience. And that's what holds them. If you talk about the connectedness to your audience, that does it for you, right?
Yes. And I think that's what it is. For my audience, they always know that I'm going to be truthful at the risk of being too transparent and at the risk of showing my fears and vulnerability. I'm going to be truthful. And I think that's why people show up time and time again, and they will go to my plays, they will watch my shows, they will order my books because they know I really stand in that truth. And I'm a big believer in everything that I've gone through, that there's a lesson in there for me, but there's also a lesson in there for others. And I believe, God kind of works through me in order to share that.
Oh, wonderful. That's an awesome soundbite. I'll tell you that. I know it's a soundbite.
Thank you.
Let's jump to Black Girl in Love. You've talked about it a couple times now. Let's get into the premise about that in a bit more detail. I know that's the latest project you're on, and whirlwind that's taken you and keeping you as busy as you have been. Let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, Black Girl in Love with Herself. I had written an article for Huffington Post about 5 years ago, and it went viral. And in that post, I had written about what self-love looks like for me and some of the things that I realized that if I started putting myself first and as a priority, there were certain things that I would need to put in place and do in my life, and what self-love looks like. So one of the things was, forgive my mother for not being the mother that I really needed at that time as a child, heal my relationship with my father, go to therapy, also know that my history doesn't determine my future. So there was all of these different points, and it went viral and so many women loved it. And then I also talked about in that, because I had done all of these steps around healing, I had manifested this wonderful relationship. And now I was in this relationship and I felt that I'd done the work, and now I was in this healing and amazing relationship. And so I got contacted by Hay House, which is one of the biggest self-help publishers in North America, to write this book about this wonderful journey of, coming to this healing place and then manifesting this great love. And they were like, you can be, this relationship guru and tell women how to manifest a great love and be in a healthy relationship. And I was like, yes, of course I can, And it's one of those things, like they say, if you want to make God laugh, make a plan, right? And so my plan was to write this amazing book about this wonderful relationship I was in. And 5 months before I was to turn the book in, my fiance sent me a text and said, I no longer want to do this. And it was such a devastation to me. And I was just like, how can I be writing this book and talking about all of these things? And yet I miss all of these vital clues that something was amiss in my own relationship. And I was really at rock bottom. And in the intro of the book, I talk about how I was crying on the bathroom floor. We had also adopted a little baby boy. So I had a 2-week-old baby. My fiance was saying that she no longer wanted to be with me. I had less than 12 days to move out of our apartment. And I was crying on the bathroom floor. And I said, God, I don't want to die, but I don't want to live like this. Like, I was just like, what happened to my life? Everything that I had imagined and invested and thought of what I thought was true was no longer there. And it was like this voice said to me, and it said, tell the truth. Your mess will become your message. And it was just this thing of like, I was this like, okay, I need to tell women what to do when the whole image that you have curated on social media and Facebook and Instagram no longer matches your reality, right?
Right.
And how to get yourself back up off the bathroom floor. And that's what Black Girl in Love became of. I had to really examine what had led me to really ignore a lot of the signs, what had led me to give the duty of loving myself over to someone else, right? And not thinking that I was worthy of loving myself or that I was worthy of being in something that felt healthy enough for me and actually poured into me without me always pouring into someone else. And so that's what this book is about. And it's in the book, I give, worksheets and tips to women of, how to look at their own lives, how to look at their history, their past, their relationships with their families, the relationships that they have chosen to be in or have left. And just to kind of come full circle and take a moment to kind of say, why am I making the choices that I'm making? And so each chapter has these worksheets. It has stories from my own experience. It also has affirmations. And it's really a guide to women, Black women especially, to find themselves and to get rid of this strong Black woman notion and stop being in survival mode and really take time to kind of pause and say, why am I doing what I'm doing in order to please everyone else? And yet I'm not happy.
Right. Again, going back to the importance of the truth and saying the truth shall set you free.
Yes, yes.
That's exactly what you were able to turn it into. And the fact that mid-project, if you will, midstream, you had to adjust the focus of this book because now it became a slightly and more powerful message, I would say.
Definitely. And I think that's what life is about. Like sometimes you're on one path and then all of a sudden you got to do a detour. And I think if there's anything that 2020 has showed us is that you got to pivot, right? And sometimes that pivot comes when we are really not ready and when we are really not comfortable. And I don't think it was a coincidence that I was writing this book in 2020 when the whole world was just experiencing this radical shift of the way that we are moving through the world, and things that we were counting on and thinking were going to happen no longer existed, right? So it was a symbolic journey for me in so many ways because everything around me was also changing and the world that I knew it was changing as well, you know?
And I also see a tremendous message in just adversity. Like we're all going to have things that happen to us. We're all going to experience situations. And again, do we stay on the bathroom floor? Do we get up and make that adjustment or make that pivot and turn, as you said, the mess into the message? And that's exactly what you did, which is phenomenal.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So powerful. So when we talk about challenges and adversities, is there any other sort of tips or thoughts that you can give to people along when in their own lives and when they come across things or experience things rather?
Yes, I think one of the biggest things, and I write about it in the book, is I think many of us tend to bury our heads in the sand. And I think especially women, because we have this checklist, right? And I was guilty of it too, of kind of like, oh, okay, well, by 25, I should, find my person. And then by 30, we should buy a house. And then by 35, we should have kids. And then I should have this amazing job. And I should have this amount of money in the bank. And this is, and you check and check and check. And then if you see something that kind of makes you go, oh, I'm not on track, you then really kind of, and this was happened to me, like I kind of buried my head in the sand because I wanted to complete this checklist at all costs, right? Regardless if I knew within my heart and within my soul, this wasn't the path that I needed to be on. But because I was so dedicated to this life checklist, I refused to acknowledge things that were not well in my own life, right? And so I think if there's anything that advice I want to give to people is be okay with not always being able to complete this unrealistic checklist that you have, and be okay with knowing, like I remember when my relationship ended and I said to my cousin, and I was crying and I was like, I don't want to start all over again. I'm in my 40s and I failed and I'm starting all over again. And I don't want to be single and I don't want to be starting with somebody and asking them, what's your favorite color? I'm too old for this, right? And my cousin said to me, you're not starting again. You're starting from experience. This time you're very clear now on what you want. And that is something that really sat with me. And I think a lot of us have to know that it's not necessarily starting again. It's being really clear on what you now are allowing and who you want to be and who you want to evolve into. And again, you are starting from experience. Yeah.
Amazing. Trey, I'm so pleased. And again, I know I keep talking about the truth, but I mean, so much of what we're talking about centered around the importance of telling our own truth. So I want to thank you for sharing that. One last question before we go. And, I'm just wondering if you had, that one person out there that was contemplating making that big leap of faith, if you will, and they're on the fence there and they're not sure. What would you tell them, Trey? What would you say to them to sort of encourage them to find their own truth?
Yeah, you have to take that first step. I think you will regret it if you do not stand in your truth and listen to that little voice that says there must be something more out there for me. There must be another way. And there is a calling. I truly believe all of us have a calling on our own lives. And if we sit in the silence and wait and listen, and I know I've been doing that so much more in my life, of being like, I will say, God, like, what's my next step? Where do you want me to go? Where do you want me to be? Who do you want me to talk to? I need to know what you want from me. And I think because a lot of us are so much in that survival mode of like, let's get it done, we don't have the time to be silent and really sit and say, is this the path that I really need to be on? And so if there's anything that I encourage people to do is really sit in that silence and really listen and really stop trying to please everybody and try and live up to the unrealistic expectations that social media and society has put on us of this is what you need to be happy. And really not be afraid to reinvent your whole damn world and existence, right? Because you're never too old to start again. You're never too old to kind of say, hey, you don't know me like that, right? You really don't know me like that. Like, I'm not the same person I was even 5 minutes ago. So you can always change and go in a different direction.
Yeah. With that comes a lot of courage, right? To go in that different
direction.
I believe I heard it say, courage is that judgment when what you want is more important than your fears. And I think
that's what we're talking about, right?
So.
Yes. Courage is a big thing. And we have to dig deep for it. We really have to dig deep because a lot of people are not living courageous lives. They're just going by, what is expected of them. And so I think we have to learn to be courageous. We have to learn to be bold, audacious, and do all of those kind of things. Yeah.
Full circle. I like the way that goes full circle. So
yeah.
So Trey, if we can let our listeners know where they can find out more about you, the Black girl in love with herself, and what you have coming out, because the opportunity to hear your truth and the way it can inspire others, I think it's so important. So where can our listeners and viewers go?
Yeah, sure. Please. The book is on pre-order right now and it officially drops January 5th, but you can order the book and it will show up at your house January 5th. It makes amazing New Year's gifts. If you're doing a new me, new you kind of thing for 2020, this is definitely your book. You can order it on Amazon. You can go to my website, treyanthony.com, TREY Anthony.com, to find out what shows I'm doing. I'm also going to be doing a lot of virtual readings from the book. Hay House has me hosting their Instagram lives pretty much every Monday. I'm going to have a podcast coming out soon in the new year, Black Girl in Love with Herself. And I'm also going to be doing a Move Your Damn Body series, which has been really important for me in this self-help journey. I've lost about 50 pounds and I've taken up exercising, eating right. So I have a program coming out with that in the new year. So it's just about just really supporting. This is the first time I think a book has come out what is geared specifically towards Black women and our own experiences around self-help and self-love and self-care. And, men, it's for you as well. You need to know what's going on. My brother read it and he was just like, I love this, And so it's about support and just saying that we are worthy of having books like this in our lives and we are worthy of care and love and support. So please go out there and buy it.
Amazing. And I can't help, I have to ask, I mean, looking at the success that you had with the Kink, would the Black girl be in love with herself hit the stage or small screen or big screen? Is that a problem?
I'm really hoping the book will go the same journey, like what was that book by Steve Harvey? Think Like a Man.
Act Like a Woman? Oh, no.
Yeah. Something like that.
I always mess that up.
Yeah, that one where, it's a self-help book, but it's spun off into TV shows and films. And that's what I'm really hoping. And the brand Black Girl in Love is really a brand around wellness. So I'm hoping, eventually when we're able to convene again to do seminars, retreats, there's a clothing line that's going to come out as well. And so I'm just hoping, I'm very invested in this awareness of making Black women take care of themselves emotionally, physically, financially, and on a very holistic approach as well.
Amazing. Trey, thank you so much for this. This has been such a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time, and glad you can hear and share it again. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it. And happy holidays to you. And thank you for doing and keeping this platform for us to have. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. You take care.
No matter if days are rainy or sunny, happy or sad, we got to move past that fear that debilitates us and find the courage and strength to own everything that happens to us. Because ultimately, our lives are a story. And through those stories, we can positively impact others, give hope, and show that positive change is possible. So in closing, I would encourage each and every one of you to own your own experiences and speak your truth. That's it for me. Thanks as always for joining the Audacious Living Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to others, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.